This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm Travis Perry. I am joined with me today is Russ Thornton. Russ, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Travis. Excited to be here.
Yeah, Russ is a financial life planner for women and their families age 55 and over. He works with women to help them get the most out of their money instead of simply more money out. I'll try that again. Russ is a financial life planner for women and their families age 55 and older. He works with women to help them get the most out of their money instead of simply more money out of their money. So thanks for jumping in and helping other advisors out. I love your specialty here. And, Russ and I actually recorded a couple of days ago for his podcast. So, this is kind of fun, role reversal, but getting to chat with you about what you do and how you can help advisors a little bit with their balance, even with just your story and how you help your specific niche. But tell us, Russ, before we get into some questions, how'd you get here? How'd you get into the industry? Specifically, like, why did you start, wanting to work with this specific niche?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So I've been an advisor for 28 years. Wound up starting pretty much right out of college. This was back in the early 90s. And honestly, Travis, I can't say that I went to college or ever had a childhood dream of getting into financial advice. Interestingly, my dad had been a lifelong financial services employee. He started as a broker and then transitioned to management for one of the big wirehouse firms and spent his entire career there. So I had some indirect exposure to it, but it was something that never jumped out jumped to the top of my mind as something I wanted to do. The short version of the long story is graduated college, had a degree in business and computers, and didn't really, and by the way, this was pre-internet, really pre-cell phone. So I'm kind of dating myself a bit here, but didn't really have a really strong idea of what I wanted to do. So I, during the summer, I took a little time off and I applied for some wait staff jobs and some landscaping jobs and things like that. And I wound up talking to my dad about it. And he's like, well, hey, if you want, why don't you can come into the office and kind of be a gopher, pay a few bucks an hour, things like that. And so I was like, yeah, well, I don't have anything better going on. So I came in the office, and what I quickly discovered, which was somewhat surprising to me, is that, in a business that I would have imagined was all about numbers and finance and spreadsheets and calculators and things like that, I really got a firsthand glimpse of the deep relationships that some of these advisors had built with their clients, often over decades and sometimes multiple generations of the same family. And man, that just kind of lit me up. And so I started, talking to some of these advisors more and asking them questions and kind of getting to know a little bit more about what they did besides just the, investment or financial planning advice. And it really opened my eyes to something I think to that point wasn't really, didn't really know existed, frankly. So long story short, I wound up getting a broker training opportunity in another office here in Atlanta, kind of out of my dad's chain of command. And I survived Merrill Lynch. Survival is probably the best way to describe it. I was there for about a dozen years. And since then, I left, dropped my securities licenses, went fee only. I ran my own small firm for a couple of years. And then I've since joined a larger independent fee only RIA, which is where I'm at now. So that's kind of the long and winding road. And somewhere along the way, I just found myself working with more and more women. So either I was working with a couple and the husband passed away, I'd continue to work with his surviving spouse, or I was getting introduced to more women that had been widowed or gone through divorce, or even some women that were in their 50s and older that had frankly never been married. And I really enjoyed the dialogue and conversations and the relationship that I had the opportunity to develop with some of these women. Pair that with kind of my personal story about the time I was coming out of college. So about the time I'm kind of starting my career in financial services, my mom and dad went through a divorce. And my mom she'd been a stay-at-home mom. She took care of my two younger brothers and I. She was a great mom. We had a great family. But the wheels kind of came off. And long story short, my mom at the time got a meaningful amount of assets, alimony, and child support for my two younger brothers. And through through the lack of any evident good advice that she received along the way, as well as some, maybe some questionable decisions on her part, a lot of that money is gone. She's in a very different financial position today than she otherwise could have been. So I kind of embraced that and kind of embraced this natural market that I was starting to develop with women, and voila, here we are today.
Wow. So many things there that I relate to that just jumped out at me that I want to talk about real quick before we even get to some of the balance questions. I think this has to do with it. How we get into the industry, and I've never seen a clear path. Like I've never seen hey, I went to school, I did this and I became an advisor and everything was right here and I bought the practice. Like there's always these winding roads every time. And so it's kind of interesting where you got there. But the fact that your dad was, in financial, planning industry, and you got to kind of kick the tires a little bit, was kind of unique, right? I remember growing up, and my dad, he brought me to work as a plumber when I was 5, and I was carrying around the pipe wrench and the channel locks, and I was starting to learn the trade, and how impactful that has been, because I've never had to call a plumber in my life because I've had that trade, right? So it's so cool that you're, able to do that, and just brought back some memories of that. But it also, as you're talking about working with women, there is a huge need here. Let's first talk about the stats, because I know you know them, because we talked about this when you were interviewing me the other day. Financial advisors maybe aren't that aware, but they should be aware that when there is a death, and we know, number one, who dies first, right? Men die first. I have the book on my shelf, Men Die First, and multiple reasons why, but they do. So if we know that men die first and women are left to pick up the pieces of their financial plan, and even if they have a financial planner, the point of having them being involved in the plan is crucial, and have a connection with the advisor, because the stats on this, what happens when they don't?
Yeah, I mean, well, and I think you can speak to this issue perhaps better than I can, Travis, because of your dad passing away at a relatively young age, and your mom having to kind of deal with life and all that is accompanied with those a major life transition like that, and largely unexpected from what I understand. But yeah, so there's a huge opportunity, largely, painting with a broad brush, the financial services industry was created by men for men. And that's starting to change. But unfortunately, a lot of what I've seen, at least from the larger firms, is, they have a dedicated page to their services for women. They splash a little pink or some pastels on it, maybe some flowers, and it almost feels forced. But regardless of how the industry, the advice industry, has traditionally tried to meet women where they are, there's still a huge opportunity and a big need. One of the stats that sticks out in my mind is within 12 months of the death of a husband, the surviving spouse, 70% of them change advisors. And the reasons are because A, they just don't have a relationship with their husband's advisor, or B, or two, and more telling in my mind, is they feel that the advisor is condescending in their communications. So I think a big part of it is, a lot of advisors just don't know how to communicate to women. And sure. So again, we can spend a lot of time talking on that very issue. But yeah, add to all that, as you said, women live longer. There's the wage gap. Often women kind of fall into this caregiver role, So, with aging parents, a lot of times the primary responsibility falls to an adult daughter, and increasingly with adult children that need support, or whether that's housing, physical support, financial support, or both, as some of them are coming out of college and being challenged with the job market. So it's just there's a lot there to unpack and help these women address. It's challenging work, but it's super rewarding as well.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you touching on the stats and the reasons why 70% of women after being widowed change advisors for various reasons. And I think that is a stat that all advisors should know about, right? Because we talk about gaining clients and keeping balance while you're scaling your business and all these things. But to lose clients, you're losing assets, you're losing a generation to another advisor, somebody like you who specializes in working with them. And it's not like you're the competition, but you kind of are if you know that they're out there looking. And so I think it's important. It's really important. And I love the niche that you're in, because this does hit home. As you mentioned, my father passed away. He was 49. My listeners know this. But we don't usually talk about my mom. This is a great time. And I want to talk about this. And this is why I brought this up. When my mother was sitting there grieving my father's, untimely death, and I was trying to help her. She didn't even really know who her advisor was. She didn't even know where her retirement account was at. And some of that was just my mom didn't want to deal with the money. She wanted my dad to deal with it. She wanted no part of it. And that was a struggle because I was left picking up the pieces and I didn't even know where to start. And I was the advisor, coming in to try to help the family who, you're the son, and we've already done some stuff. So it was tough. It was really tough. I actually had to break into my father's computer. I had to hack in somehow and hack the passcode and call all the banks. And it was a total nightmare because none of that was organized. So for me, I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out just where everything was at after dealing with that. And like yourself, you dealt with a mother who a lot of that money is gone from the divorce. My mom actually had a great position, a great circumstance. My father left her with a lot of life insurance, and we were able to have a fantastic plan, but it was gone in 2 years. 2 years.
Wow.
And so this is a relation. I don't want to get into like all the nitty gritty of that situation and then leave people wondering like, well, what happened? Maybe I'll leave that for the next book I write. But the reality is there is a niche here of women who either are not involved, don't want to be involved, or want to be involved and they're left out. Like there's all of these different concerns. So having someone like you to help them, I'm really grateful that you're out there doing what you're doing, because I know it's needed. It's very much needed. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's interesting, the comment you made. A lot of women will actually say like, I'm happy to let my husband take care of that. Or I don't really, I don't really enjoy talking about money, but that's not something that advisors should take at face value, because and it doesn't. I think a lot of them are while capable and bright and educated, I think they just are often kind of overwhelmed or maybe even a little intimidated by the thought of it all. And so by making it not just making it easy, accessible, and digestible, but also like just giving them a safe space to invite them into those conversations, to give them a voice, whereas they might otherwise say, I'm fine, whatever he says, works for me. There's real opportunity there. So, and I'm just doing my little small part in my corner of the world to try to help where I can.
I love it. But it's a great corner, and like I said, it's very much needed. Advisors aren't aware of that. They should be, and they should be, paying close attention to this podcast, because I think they're going to learn a lot. Now we're going to talk about balance, and we're going to talk about, how you can help advisors with this issue a little bit later in the podcast. But so number one, let's just jump to balance. While you're helping your clients and you're building your business, you've been doing this for a while. You didn't just come on the scene yesterday. But what is your definition of balance?
Yeah. So, what a great and deep question. And I think it's evolved over the years. Initially, like if I think back 20, 25 years ago, I was starting my career, had just gotten married. For me, balance was, um, you know, earning enough, growing the business, meeting more clients, while still making sure that I had time for my wife, family, friends. That was kind of the extent of it as I think back today. Um, I'd like to think that these days I have a little better or a more holistic view of balance. So it's still taking care of my clients, running a profitable business, putting my clients at the center of that, but also making sure that I prioritize time for my wife and my family, my friends, neighbors, things like that. But beyond that, so maybe those two core elements haven't really changed over the years, and I don't know that they will. But beyond that, I've also had the benefit of also recognizing the importance of my health and self care. So it's eating better, fitness, moving. There's also like the learning component where like I love to listen to podcasts, for example, like yours, Travis, among others. I like to read. I just went through some really great life planning training through a firm called Money Quotient here a few weeks ago. So there's the component of trying to remain curious, to continue to learn and grow. There's an element of spirituality, and that's not just religion, although that's certainly a part of it. It's just having an opportunity to have quiet time with yourself, to be alone with your thoughts, whether that's through meditation or exercise or walking or whatever form that takes, and community. So thinking larger than myself or my family or my immediate group of friends, what am I doing or what can I do to, help the world around me, leave the world a better place than it was when I got here. So I'm not sure that's an exhaustive answer, but those are a few thoughts that come to mind around the idea of balance and what it means to me.
I love that. I love how your definition has evolved too, right? Because, like I said, you didn't just get on this boat yesterday. You have been in the industry long enough to know that, things change and you change and your priorities have changed a little bit. Right now, it's at first it was, I just got to be there for everybody else and my clients. And now it's, I need to be there for me. Like I need to focus on my own health, my own learning, my own development, my spirituality. And I find that those things, they kind of fluctuate depending on, age, experience, and just development. So I appreciate that there's been kind of a more holistic focus on your definition of balance. It's just really cool. So what do you see in general? I mean, you rub shoulders with other advisors. Not only are you an advisor, but you coach other advisors and you help them. So you touch the lives of a lot of advisors out there, and you've been in this industry for a while. What do you think are maybe the 1, 2, 3 biggest issues for other advisors when it comes to achieving balance?
So another great question. I think, speaking both personally as well as based on interactions with other advisors, some of who I've got to know really well over the years, and some who I can consider close friends, I can, if I take a step back, I can see a pretty distinct difference between those advisors that have really gone through a level of self-examination. Like, what am I, where am I going? What am I building? Whether it's with their business or in their broader life. What am I working towards? Is there a plan, or are they literally just, more is the answer? And I've found that can often be dangerous. So I think the real opportunity to achieve better balance as an advisor, and maybe the problem I encounter most often is advisors are great at giving advice, but it's kind of like the cobbler whose kids have no shoes. I don't know that they often turn that lens on themselves as critically or as regularly as they should. So, and again, that's not just as in their role as a professional advisor, although that's clearly an opportunity and a big part of it. It's like a good example is, if Travis refers a 33-year-old married couple to me that have young kids and they need help, as someone who likes to help people, my first inclination is to say, well, yeah, I'd love to talk to them. I'd love to see if I can help. But knowing that I've chosen to build my business and practice around a specialty that deals more with women that are 55 plus and their families, a young 30s couple is not a good fit for me. So what I would instead do is I would talk to them and see if I could maybe point them to a better solution. Many advisors, certainly not all, but many advisors, literally, if somebody's willing to talk to them, they're going to fall all over themselves to try to win that business. And maybe when you're starting out, that's not a bad attitude to have. But as you get to a point where you're a little bit more stable, you can hopefully be a little bit more selective, a little bit more intentional about who you serve and how you serve them. I think there's an opportunity to be a little bit more willing to say no, or to say, not me, but let me help you find somebody else that would be a better fit. And that's just one small microcosm of all of those types of decisions that advisors are faced with, a gazillion times a day. So, whether it's, which clients do you work with best, or do you want to work with, to how many clients do you want to work with ultimately, to how are you spending your time during a week? Do you meet with clients whenever they pick up the phone and call, or do you have, like, I meet with clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays and the afternoons of Wednesdays, as an example. So I think there's an opportunity to be a lot more deliberate about how you're spending your time, how you're, running your life, of which your advisory business is an important part. But I think you can apply kind of this thinking to everything you're doing. So I'll take a breath, but that's some initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, I literally did a post in May about the cobbler's children, and I called out financial advisors, don't be the cobbler's children, because I found a lot of financial advisors aren't taking their own advice, for example, with their own financial planning. So I saw this a lot as an advisor myself, well, I know life insurance, I know investments, I know holistic financial planning, so I'm going to do my own plan. And, even just that principle, as you kind of brought up, well, are we not telling other people to have someone else do your plan for you? And shouldn't you consider having another advisor at least look it over? That's the bare minimum that I'm suggesting, is at least have somebody who is a more, seasoned veteran than you are in the industry, even if by a year or something, or more education or something, be able to look at your plan and give you just a second opinion. Because I know a lot of advisors, they like to keep their clients close, but they like to keep their own plans even closer. And I just think there's like, as you mentioned, not working on ourselves, it goes for our own financial plans, and it goes for our own balance, as we're talking about here. So, man, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that one, and I think that opens up a can of worms for a lot of advisors on, well, what else are we missing out on here? Because if we're helping our clients so that they can have more freedom, more time, more energy, whatever it is, are we not supposed to be the example of that? It's like going to an overweight doctor and asking for advice on dieting. It doesn't make sense. They might know the process and they might be able to teach you the process. And so it might be effective if you follow it. But there is an effort of persuasion. And there's a gentleman who spoke specifically on persuasion. I forget his name now, but that was one of the three things is that he brings up is if you're not walking the walk, you can talk the talk all you want, and you're going to be somewhat effective. But imagine the effectiveness when you're living that life yourself. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, a couple things. Though cliched, actions do speak louder than words. So I think there's a lot to that. And the other thing too, just to kind of put a finer point on what you're saying is that a lot of advisors literally, and I think part of this is a function of how a lot of the industry operates. But when I joked earlier about like surviving at the wirehouse, it literally, as I recall today, it felt like survival most days. I mean, I was literally cold calling people, trying to find the next person that would be willing to, let me come meet with them and try to win their business. And so I think it can be very difficult for people that come up in that environment to then think, all right, well, now I need to start being more intentional, more deliberate, more purposeful with the business I'm building. Otherwise, you run the risk of building something that, basically is this can be an anchor around your neck, because you've built this thing that, it just kind of doesn't really have a lot of shape or definition. And as a result, your business, how you spend your time, doesn't have a lot of shape or definition either. And that can lead to problems.
Yeah. And I love that, again, you're leading by example. Here is my niche. This is who I help. And you're very, like, your website speaks right to that niche, like wealthcareforwomen.com. And as people jump on those website, like, everything speaks to it, right? It's exactly who you're niched in and helping. And the fact that, if someone did come in, you would spend some time with them and then find the right fit. That to me goes the extra mile. Because I know a lot of advisors go, well, this is my niche, so I'm sorry, I can't help you, right? It's stiff arm, boom, right. You're out. Oh, you don't have enough assets? Well, I'm a fee-based financial advisor and I can't help. Why not bring them in as you did and as you've done and talked about there, and then find the right fit for them, who could be, a good connection for you to be working with. And the thing that I love about that is they're going to sing your praises when they find that right connection. And it always comes back. Like, if not in business, at least you feel like you've done the right thing. And as a fiduciary, we don't have that responsibility as an advisor to do the right thing.
Well, and
I love that, man.
Yeah. And honestly, my motivation there is one of helping, but it's not entirely selfless, because it's given me an opportunity to identify other advisors that have other niches or specialties.
Sure.
And there's no expectation here, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, well, if I refer people to other advisors that are better fit, maybe the next time that advisor encounters a woman in her 50s, 60s, et cetera, that needs some help, that might be a little, outside of their wheelhouse, maybe they'll think of me. And again, no expectations there, but there are some potential business opportunities from that kind of approach as well, I would argue.
Exactly. Like I said, like, it'll always come back to, whether in business or just the feel goods, right? Just like, hey, I did the right thing. And that can be a quick thing. It doesn't have to be like a formal come into the office, sit down and talk. It could be a 5-minute conversation. Hey, let's talk really quick. Let's see how we can work with this. So, and this goes to when I'm working with advisors, helping them in all areas, their business and personal goals. One of the biggest things is, how do I scale my practice without losing my balance, right? Kind of, I'm balanced now, but I'd like to scale it and make more money, be even more productive, kind of, the next level thinking. And the first thing I tell them, every single advisor, is, what is your niche? Oh, I think my niche is working with military veterans. Great. What's the percentage of your clientele that are military veterans? Ooh, 20%. Yeah, that's a problem, right? So you may have identified, you may think that that's your niche, but is it really truly your niche? And once you can niche down, I found the more you can even hyper niche, the more that people will refer to you, because they're going to think of you and they're going to know, okay, Russ is the wealth management guy for women. Like that, it's just going to stick. So I love your direction. I love what you're doing there. What other things do you think that advisors struggle with? Obviously not being working on themselves so that they have cobbler's children syndrome, but what else do you think that they might struggle with when it comes to balance?
I think another big part of it, Travis, is, and by the way, this has been magnified over the last 15 months with COVID, is drawing the line between, work and personal life. and I'm not one of those people that thinks there has to be like this bright red line that separates what you do professionally and what you do personally. I think they often blend and blur into one another. But as someone that has primarily worked from a home office since 2007, and as many more people have gotten a taste of in the last 12 to 15 months because of COVID and offices being closed and people relying on things like Zoom and doing more remotely or from home, it can be really challenging to know when you're working and when you're not, or to be deliberate about that. If you've got kids that are coming into your office while you're on a call and they want to spend time with you, and you're making, whether you're doing it consciously or not, you're making those decisions, and you need to make sure those decisions align with the person that you are and the person that you want to be. So I think, and I know you address this in your book, Achieving Balance, but I think time management is a big piece of this, and being deliberate about how you're spending your time, with whom you're spending your time, and knowing that when you're not working, you're literally not working. So it can be dangerous to try to have one foot in both camps all the time, and I encounter a lot of advisors that do that. So I'm not sure if that's the best example, but that's one that comes to mind, and I encounter a lot.
Oh, dude, this is huge. I, like you, have been working from home since '07. And so this is nothing new, but as I was writing this book, I knew that balance would be exacerbated. The problems with it would be exacerbated because all of a sudden we go from, hey, I've got my cell phone, and once in a while I check my email for work and whatnot, and just to check on things, to now I'm at home, and how do I keep things separate? That's a real issue. And so I like that you mentioned that, having those boundaries, and obviously there's going to be some blur, but if it's overlap all the time, whoa, that's when you've got a problem, right?
Yeah. And the constant overlap, I think, can really lead to health issues and increased stress and anxiety, because you don't ever feel like you're truly stepping away from the business to kind of recharge your batteries or to take care of yourself. Some of the things we talked about earlier. So it's not just about, how and where you're spending your time, but it's also about balance from the perspective of you can't be in business mode 24 hours a day. That's just not healthy. So I think it's also about recognizing the benefits of being able to step away, unplug from the business side of things, not just to spend time with your family and your loved ones and things like that, but just to recharge your own batteries for your own kind of mental health. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, huge. I'm glad you brought that up, because the mental health aspect of this, it's all related to your physical health. Like our brain, we tend to go like, oh, mental health, this separate little thing over here. Well, no, our brain's related to our entire body, and everything that we do with it affects it, and vice versa. It's an organ that is connected in a system or systems inside our body. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And that is honestly one of the biggest reasons why I focus so heavily on balance and time management, is that it's the stress, it's the anxiety. And I think it's the silent killer that really was demise of my father. And quite honestly, most middle-aged men in America, and women, the stats are there too. So, well, I appreciate bringing both of these issues up. As an advisor, and an advisor to advisors, what would have been maybe some of your issues with not having the cobbler children syndrome yourself, and having these boundaries at home for you personally? Like what have been some things that you've either done that have been successful, or what are you still struggling with? People love the raw examples and the stories to know that, okay, I'm not the only one that's struggling here. But throw in some things that have worked for you as well.
Yeah. So one that comes to mind for me personally is, in talking to other advisors, I've heard this from others as well, is that, this business, depending on your work environment, can be pretty lonely sometimes, especially if you're an independent or you work primarily from home. Certainly I have the opportunity to talk to folks like you, Travis, and others via Zoom or phone, or get together with, for coffee and things like that, which I do. But outside of that, like just through a normal work day outside of client meetings, it can be a little bit lonely. And so, and what I've found that can lead to is when you have a air quotes success in your business. So you get a new client, or you really reach a milestone with an existing client, or you just really, something goes well. For me, that little bit of that rush that I get from that makes me want to double down more into the business. So instead of stepping back and celebrating that, or sharing it with my wife or other advisors, oftentimes I'll say, man, that felt good. I want more of that. And so I'll double down and I'll literally put my head down, put the blinders on, and work, that much harder. Which, hearing myself say that sounds kind of crazy, but I find myself doing that. And I think maybe that there's an element of that goes back to my training in the warehouse days, where I was literally trained as a salesperson. And so I think there's that little bit of a, dopamine hit I get from not a sale per se, but just that little win. And you kind of want more of it. And so I've caught myself, I've tried to get better about catching myself in that behavior, or in that cycle, to step out of it and just appreciate the win, walk away, remember that I've got a lot of other things, wonderful things going on in my life outside of my business. And I can always come back and fight again the next day. So that's one that comes to mind that hits close to home.
Yes. Thank you for being so transparent with this. I see this all the time, and it's I achieve something, whether it's a sale, a new client, a benchmark for your quarter, your yearly goal, and there's no celebration. And then we wonder, gee, why don't I achieve my goals? Well, because you never celebrated. The dopamine effect that you get, that is your brain celebrating. Woohoo! Wonderful. Like when I go to the gym, or I'm done with my mountain bike ride, the rush of endorphins that flood my body are telling me, thank you, great job, let's celebrate. So celebrate with like relaxing. I love it. The gym that I go to has like this water massage chair. So when I'm done and I'm like, man, that was a tough workout, I'll just sit in that chair for like 5 minutes. Like, that is reward. Like, what are we doing to reward ourselves? And so, and celebrating those things, I think that can definitely be a cycle of workaholism, right? Where we search for those wins, we hit it, the dopamine rush comes, and then we continue going again instead of maybe taking a break, celebrating that. What have you done? I mean, let's focus on the strengths-based, aspects of this. You say sometimes, you take a break, you pull back. But what have you done in the past? Like, have you said, okay, great, if I hit this goal, I'm going to go on a vacation, or I'm going to purchase something for the business, or I'm going to take my wife out? Like, what have you done that has worked, that has allowed you to kind of get through that?
I'm probably not as systematic about this as I could be. But it's nothing even as grand as, taking a trip or something like that, because we're trying to build that into our lives anyway, irrespective of what's going on in my business. And I think that's probably the more healthy approach. For me, it's as simple as like getting up and taking the dog for a walk, and it could be in the middle of the day, or it could be going out. Like I've always got a honey-do list of stuff to do around the house or the yard, and just going out and taking half an hour or 45 minutes and working on something, basically stepping away from the business for a little while. And for many, yard work probably does not sound super celebratory, but for me, I kind of enjoy it. It's a way to get up and move, to get out of my desk, to get out of kind of that environment that I spend so much time in anyway. So yeah, it's been great to just do little things like that. And I don't know that I would think of them as a reward, but for me, it's just nice to change it up, mix it up, kind of change my environment, my scenery, get outside, get some sunshine. All those things do wonders for me. And that also I find helps me get out of my own head and think more creatively, about other things. And sometimes there's a business element to that as well. But yeah, it's really just kind of getting up, moving around, doing something different for a little period of time. That, for me personally, that does wonders.
Love that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be something grand, right? In building in your vacations, that is very healthy. Like whether you hit these awesome, goals or not. So I appreciate that advice to other advisors. Like, and maybe just think about this as you're listening. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing to celebrate? Is it something small, like just getting outside, walking the dog? I know a lot of people that the reason why they have a garden is not because they can't go buy food at the store, is because they need something therapeutic that they can go and put their hands in some dirt and feel like, yes, I'm doing something else. And what is that out for you? I'm talking to the listeners here, not necessarily you, Russ. You kind of given us some great examples, but as we're thinking about this, how are we celebrating? Is it built in? Is it something that we're shooting for? If we hit a certain goal, we're rewarding ourselves in certain, as a prize, a vacation, or maybe just something simple, like as Russ was saying. I appreciate that. What other issues do you think you may struggle with as now you have this niche, you're building it, you've got, some great longevity in the practice and the business. At your point in your practice, what might be some other issues that come up for you personally?
Another one that I think about a lot is this idea of enough. I've built, by my standards, a pretty successful, sustainable practice. I've got clients that I love working with. But I always fall back into this mentality of I've got to keep growing. I got to find that next client. And because, and to be honest, because my clientele is typically 55, 60 plus, a lot of them are starting to live on their assets. And so some of their assets are being drawn down over time. So there's an element of needing to kind of replenish that to keep, my business stable. But the other side of that is like, really just being honest with like, how much is enough? What am I building towards? Like when will I have arrived? And honestly, Travis, depending on the day of the week, it is, oftentimes that can change. Every once in a while I have these, these flashes of, man, wouldn't it be cool if I like really built an enterprise, like something that would last beyond me, like hired people. And then the next moment I'm like, I've kind of been deliberately building this lifestyle business for the last, 20 years. I don't think I'm willing to throw in the towel on that. So it's kind of some occasional indecision or waffling around, like, what am I building? How much is enough? I don't envision a day where I'll ever close the doors and say, that's it. But I do sometimes get challenged personally with, as much as I've thought about and tried to be deliberate about a niche and the type of people that I can serve best and that I enjoy serving and who's a great profitable client for me, where I can add a lot of value, I still sometimes, waver and second guess myself and say, is that really enough, or is it enough for me? And most of the time the answer is yes, but sometimes I have those little glimpses or flashes of, what if? And so I think in our work as advisors, I think asking why and asking what if can be really powerful in our work with clients. But I think there's maybe a dangerous allure of asking ourselves what if a little too often, because we can maybe lose our grip or lose sight of kind of what we're working towards or what we're building towards. And so that's something that I don't know that it's a problem, but it can present challenges because it can lead to a loss of focus, a little bit of being scatterbrained and not working towards what I've been working towards for all these years.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that concern, and it's a good one. The whole question of enough, and if we're looking at this too often, it might stress us out. It might bring anxiety, and the thing that comes to my mind is fear. Like, what are we afraid of? And it's the idea that we'll run out. Like as you're helping your own clients, you're seeing some of those challenges for them, and then that can come back over to you. I know firefighters, they struggle a lot with their mental blocks of they're seeing so much, paramedics, firefighters, whatever, they see so much on a daily basis that they have to block out and not bring home. Otherwise it's difficult. Or do they need to talk it out so they can get through it? Like, it's that challenge of the mental stress and the anxiety and quite honestly, those fears. I appreciate you bringing that up and talking about, for you, one of the things that you do is, not try to second guess yourself and be confident in who you are. You're doing a great thing. And I appreciate this. I appreciate the time we've had to chat today. I know you help advisors by serving this population. So if you have someone who's in this demographic, a woman who's over the age of 55, who's either been through divorce, who's widowed, or really just needs some financial help, married or not, that you're able to help them, Russ. And so that's great. You can reach out to Russ. How can they reach you? What's the best place? I plugged your website earlier, wealthcareforwomen.com. Is that the best place for them to go?
Yeah, that's probably the best place to track me down. I write a little bit online, so if you Google me, I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So I'm not too difficult to track down. But yeah, if you want to learn more or reach out, I'm happy to speak to anyone. So best to go to my website, wealthcareforwomen.com. There's a little contact form bubble on the bottom right corner of every page, so it's pretty easy to reach out and let me know what's on your mind.
Excellent. I know we talked a little bit earlier about how not only do you help this population, but you can help advisors as well if they're struggling with a client. So reach out to Russ. He's a subject matter expert in this area, and I'm grateful to have him on the podcast today. Thank you for helping advisors have better balance by helping them with this niche, but also with the the real life answers and the honesty you've been able to deliver today to this podcast. That hopefully will give other advisors some encouragement. Those that are struggling with these areas, knowing, hey, I'm not alone. But B, there's some ways that you can cope with those right away. So thanks for being on the show today, Russ. And those who, have been following me know that the Achieving Balance book is available. We're getting done with the audio as we speak now. By the time this airs, it'll be finished and edited and ready to go. So the Kindle, plus the Audible and the paperback will all be ready for you guys there. Definitely pick that up at achievingbalancebook.com. And thanks again, Russ, for being a wonderful guest on the show today.
Thanks, Travis. This was a lot of fun and always enjoy speaking with you. So I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Balance Advisor podcast.